G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty, a big 24 to 48 hours, hasn't it been? I mean, it's just blown up the chat with Dogs to Galvin. Everybody else from every other club's blowing up. All the Bulldogs fans are saying, lay off us, but it's been crazy.
It's been great. It's been a lot of fun, actually. It's interesting to watch the way the rugby league news cycle just every now and then when you're just starting to hear the crickets in the background, suddenly something blows up and off it goes. And that's why rugby league's the game it is. That's why people love it and why it's so well supported, because it just generates so much emotion. So, look, if you're in the middle of these storms, it's never a whole lot of fun. But it's an interesting thing. And the one thing about this is emotionally, a lot of people have been triggered by it. A lot of people have either got a real dislike now of the Bulldogs, given the fact that there's this perception now they're out trying to buy a premiership, and the Bulldogs fans are all knuckling down and saying bring it on. So which is what you'd expect the Bulldogs fans, to be honest. So it's really caused an emotional reaction with a lot of people.
Do you think it passes the pub test?
The deal? Well, look, the deal passes the pub test so far. The Canterbury, particularly Phil Gould's behaviour around it, probably doesn't pass a pub test. If you join the dots, okay, let's go as far. Look, let's go this far back to over the summer, the off season. He brokered a peace deal with Isaac Moses, who he was one of many officials who'd fallen out with Isaac Moses.
Gus did, yep.
Phil Gould. But he brokered a peace deal. They got back together. They got talking. Then the season begins, and he speaks glowingly of Lachlan Galvin, best teenage footballer he's ever seen, which I find hard to believe, given he had a teenage Brad Fittler that he coached and who he's still very close to. Brad Fittler was Lachlan Galvin's age. He was playing for Australia. So. I don't believe that, but I think I think it was intentional what he said. I don't think it was just him getting waxing lyrical and losing way of what he said. I think it was intentional. So you join the dots about the peace deal with Moses, then it goes into the over the top complimentary conversation about Galvin on air. Then the denial that came after that no, they're not interested in Lachlan Galvin. They've got other things that considerations. That was received with scepticism at the time. Not everybody believes it. And then we just move on, and then suddenly the goalpost shift last week, okay? And the shifting of the goalpost was that Lachlan Galvin was going to be available immediately rather than available at the end of or the beginning of 2027. So I don't really sit with that. I try to take him at his word. I can see how it's all worked out, but I watched 100% footy, and I've just had a bit of time to think about it, and just the way that was handled and the way that he, I suppose, lost his way towards the end. Phil Gould.
If anyone hasn't watched that yet, that's Michael Chammas and Phil Gould going head to head. It's great vision. At some stage, both of them get pretty fired up.
Look, the interesting thing I found about that was Gould likes to intimidate journalists. He uses it as one of his skills, and to be fair, he does intimidate a lot of journalists. And in a situation like that, it can be a bit overwhelming to be on live TV like that, to sit down and have him coming at you like that. The hard part about being in a situation like that from a journalist's point of view is the knowledge that they probably know more than you. So while you know what you know, you're not privy to all the information, and there's certainly information there that Phil Gould is aware of that Michael Chammas would not be aware of. But where he did very, very well, Chammas, and I applaud him for the way he handled it, was he just kept pulling up Phil Gould in the discrepancies in his argument, and things like Phil Gould saying, "You guys, you just make up gibber," okay. And Chammas is saying, well, we ask you, and you said you don't tell us the truth. So then they're forced to go out and basically, as journalists, you're forced to go out and contact other people and find out information from other people.
To try and join the dots, right?
Well, to try and figure out what's going on. Because, look, we're not naive to know when we're in this situation that people don't lie to you. People have their own agenda which doesn't always sit hand in glove with your agenda. So people will lie to you to protect information from getting out. So that's what often happens. And Gould, then Gould had a crack at Chammas for going out and writing stuff, gibbery quarter, but he didn't actually target anything specific within what Chammas had written about the Galvin and Gould that was wrong. At the time, it looked wrong, but it's now eventuated to be right, that he is going there. Okay, now Gould claimed the late change is it wasn't right when it was written, but there's a late change. Well, that's up to who do you believe? The goalposts moved. That's up to who. Do you really believe that? Or do you believe that this was always Kenty's plan all the way along? And then Gould sort of probably undermined his own argument a little bit when he spoke about Reid Mahoney and the Reid Mahoney release. And he said, look, they came to us over the off-season. They asked for a release because they wanted to look beyond
Reid Mahoney's management did.
Reid Mahoney's manager, Sam Ayub. And he said, but we didn't want to do that. He said, I didn't tell anybody. He said, but somehow it got out in the paper. Well, if that can get out in the paper, why can't the Lockie Galvin stuff get out in the paper?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he hops into Chammas for writing gibber and sort of tried to portray that what he wrote was all lies and all wrong.
Yeah.
Yet he concedes that the Reid Mahoney stuff was right. Okay, look, and people do leak. For example, if Lockie Galvin is having a meeting, or Reid Mahoney is having a conversation with his teammates, if he tells his teammates, a lot of players are quite open in their contract discussions. Okay, they don't really get down to money, but they'll talk about if they're looking elsewhere, or they've had offers from elsewhere, or they'll talk about if the club's looking to move them on. So they have these discussions. Now
they're mates, right? That's what you talk about.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So that's how stuff. That's one way stuff gets out. But the argument was fascinating the other night, and I watched Gould and I could see him slowly start to boil a little bit, and Chammas handled himself so well and refused to take a backward step. Basically met information with information back.
That's excellent.
And stood his ground. And then when Gould said to him, towards the end, words to the effect of, well, watch your words, son.
What do you think of that?
It was a shit go. Honestly. Yeah. But the thing about it, soon as he did that, I went, Gould's been done. Yeah, Chammas got him. And because that's Gould has very good self-control.
Yeah, right.
He likes to intimidate. Mm-hmm. He's not a shouter and a yeller. And in fact, he often goes the other way. When he's under threat, he often gets that cool calculating, which is an indication of his self-control. But the words he used, the way he used them to try and use that as the exclamation point on their argument, watch your words, son. I thought, you're flustered. You're in a bit of bother here. And I think Chammas was terrific. And I think it showed, for me certainly, it showed where it was all heading. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Chammas. Well done. We know he watches the show, mate. Well, we know he does because he told me, mate. You ever had a run-in with Phil? Yeah. He did pretty much the same to me when he was coaching the Roosters. Funny story, actually. But remember Ronnie Palmer used to come on the field all the time? Yeah. Anyway, Eric Cox got sick of it. The crowd, they used to boo all the rest of it, right? Anyway, what happened was I wrote him this story after it. After Eric Cox put in a formal complaint about Ronnie Palmer being on the field all the time. He played well. This guy played well. This guy played well. I said, but for sheer involvement, Ronnie Palmer was man of the match. Very good.
Anyway, the next week at the press conference in the dressing room, I asked Gould a question, and he just goes, "You get nothing from me."
Oh wow!
And I said, "What?" Anyway, he said, "You get nothing from me." So when it was over, I thought, I won't make a mug of myself here in front of everyone. But when it was over, I went and grabbed him, and he turned on me, and we had a couple of choice words with each other, and that sort of put things in motion between him and I, where basically we pass a glancing nod about every 6 or 7 years, and that's about that's about the best.
How good is that? So you haven't spoken since?
No, not. Oh, we've had a little chat. Like when he got the Origin job, and he was basically told he had to speak to the joint where I was working. Then we got back. I wouldn't say we got on, but we spoke. But again, I remember asking him a story one day. There's a big to do over the state of the Lang Park field. I asked him about it. He said, I've got no problem with it. And then the next day, all the opposition media had quotes about it, how he thought it was disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I got played then, but
Well, he had his big 50th anniversary of years in the league. You didn't get invited to that?
No,
or
I
not?
didn't.
No.
I've recently moved. So maybe it got lost in the mail.
Very good. Mate, just finally on Reed Mahoney, we hear that maybe Bailey Hayward to 9 and Reed Mahoney's on his way out. Could leave before June 30, but probably next year.
Yeah, look, I tend to think they'll try and keep Mahoney for this season. I think he's too good a player to let him go. Certainly he'll be gone by next season. He won't be at Canterbury next season. And Bailey Hayward,
where he's going?
well, look, the word is obviously the Cowboys are looking for a hooker. They've lost Reece Robson, so he goes to Roosters next year. So they are looking for a hooker that's going to come in with some experience, and he will certainly fill that role. At the moment, no one else has really stuck their hand up for him. There will be interest. I know Ayub will be on the phone, and he'll be sort of picking a few clubs that are a little bit short of a hooker, but I don't really... I don't know where else they go. Maybe the Knights might sort of have a look at him if he wants to go there. He's from up around, I think, Coffs Harbour area he's
that
from.
Makes sense.
So maybe he'll have a look there. Now, whether they can fit money after they fit him in under the cap, now they've got Dylan Brown and Kalen Ponga in the spine, remains to be seen.
Well, they've lost their hooker to Canberra. So
yeah, that's why it makes sense, I think, for him to look there. But
yeah.
again, whether he goes there, I don't know. So.
Mate, just on the cap. So Gould's saying he thinks that the cap will be tied in 2027 and even worse in 2028. Do you take that? Do you believe that?
No. Well, see, that's one of the reasons that they said they refused to let Reed Mahoney go, because the cap will be tight in 2027. With the Bears coming in and all the rest of it. Now, first off, they didn't know the Bears were definitely coming in 2027 when he made that decision.
True.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Obviously, Papua New Guinea by then had been confirmed for 2028. I actually wonder, though, whether the cap will actually go the other way, and rather than be tighter in 27 and 28, it actually might be a little bit more flexible, given the fact that you've got 2 extra clubs, you've got an extra 60-odd players coming into the competition. So you're obviously going to lose. So the competition is going to dilute. So your roster is going to dilute just to try and accommodate those 2 extra clubs, which then means you're going to have money there. You're going to bring in kids who aren't right now playing NRL, who are the right age to play NRL, because they need an extra 60 people aren't playing the NRL. So those guys will come into the game, but they'll only be earning minimum wage. They won't be earning a lot of money. They'll be on the minimum wage, which then means that the majority of your cap can be spent on the top end of your cap.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't see how it's going to be tighter. I think in many ways it's probably going to be looser, because you'll be able to just focus on the good guys that you've kept, and you've got all these extra guys sitting down the bottom who are just going to be grateful to be getting a start in the NRL. Yeah. They'll take minimum wage, and that's where it'll go. So, yeah, but how he could predict that too is, only Phil Gould and Rugby League could predict that.
Yeah, okay. Mate, whispers out of the Saints. St George Illawarra could be looking at Toby Sexton as an immediate swap.
Yeah, that's a little one that's going around now. Again, can
you tell?
It hasn't come.
That one?
It hasn't come, in a formal statement from the club. But I'm not going to tell how I got that one. No. But,
okay.
Look, it makes sense. Shane Flanagan has been concerned about Lachlan Ilias all season. He had a crack at him earlier in the season. He came out, he apologised for how heavy he went on him, but then soon after he dropped him. Okay, and Saints just aren't settled there. Ilias, it appears, is not the halfback Shane Flanagan wants. And Sexton's a quality halfback, okay? Like, that's he's currently the halfback in the team leading the competition. And if he's available, and I don't know whether the Dragons are looking long-term or just this season, but it makes sense for the Dragons. If they're having concerns in their half at the moment, they're currently sitting 10th spot. They're only out of the 8 on 4 and against. So they've got the equal amount of wins as 8th place. So they are in the fight, despite many people tipping them to be the wooden spooners for the season. They're in the fight. And a halfback like Sexton, I think, could really just bring a little bit more polish and turn a few of those games into wins.
Interesting you mentioned that, because St George Illawarra this week had Tom Eisenhoff retire. Yeah. So that creates a spot in the 30. Maybe that kind of matches up, right?
Well, it could. And the thing is, the Dragons have had a couple of games this year where they've scored more tries than the opposition. And twice they've scored more tries than the opposition and lost. And I think 3 times this season they've lost by a point. So That would, I think the Warriors beat them by a point, South beat them by a point, and I think there's one more in there, I can't quite recall. Parramatta. There you go.
Golden Point.
Parramatta and Golden Point. So there's 3 games they lost by a point. Now, if they've got a halfback like Sexton in there who's doing that halfback job, either they get the Golden Point field goal, or they get the field goal in extra time. They can either level it, send it into Golden Point, or it changes the game from that point on. But I think it's a valid conversation that I think the Dragons are quietly having without wanting to get involved in all the rubbish that's going on at the moment. The last thing the Dragons want to do is stick their head in that. But by the same token, Shane Flanagan's too good a coach to see that Toby Sexton might be available and not go there and at least have the conversation.
Big call from Toby Sexton though, leaving the top team in the comp to go to a team that's coming 10th. I guess you get to play first grade football.
Well, that's got to be the argument. The argument's going to be if he stays, will he be the halfback at the end of the season? So if he's still confident he'll be the halfback, and to be fair, I don't think anything that's happened in the last week would give him confidence that he will be.
What do you think about the idea of Bailey Hayward to 9 and then Galvin to 13? Maybe Mahon goes to 14. What do you think about that argument? And then
Reid
Sexton
Mahoney
stays.
to 14.
Sorry, no, Reid Mahoney goes.
Reid Mahoney goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kurt Mann to 14.
Oh, Kurt, yeah.
I mean, I know
look, that's all coach. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's
sideline coaches.
If Mahoney had wheels, she'd be a bike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So who knows? There's a lot of stuff in that. That's a possibility.
I mean, that means Sexton stays though.
Yeah,
that's the reason why I brought that up.
Yeah, but that's a possibility. But there's 5 different ways you could look at that.
And there's pretty good mail that the Dogs are off Sexton.
Well, they're not off him. They're not off him as a bloke. They're not off him. Look, if it doesn't work out with Galvin and suddenly at the 11th hour it all goes pear-shaped, they'll be more than satisfied to keep Sexton at the club. They like him. He buys in. He's got that team-first mentality. They've spoken about that. Only weeks ago, Serraldo was really giving him a big rap, talking about his attitude within the club and how positive it is. So they're not off him like in that regard. What they are is that they are at that ruthless edge of professional sport where it's now about wins and losses, and there's an understanding in all elite sport that your window to win opens. Everyone talks in rugby league the premiership window. Okay, now Parramatta's premiership window opened and closed. They didn't win. Canterbury don't want to be the next club to do that. And they want to make sure that if their window is now opening, okay, so they want to make sure that they will do everything possible to win that premiership, which might be, and it might only be let's just throw a figure on it, say a 10% improvement or a 20% improvement from Sexton to Galvin as their halfback. And a lot of people aren't convinced he is a starting halfback, Galvin, but that's where they'll look to play him. But if they can get that slight improvement out of that, and what it comes down to with Sexton and Galvin, what they're looking for from the half is the game management. That's the crucial thing, and it's an ability to recognise within the game where they are and what they need. For example, if the momentum is against you. Yeah, we spoke about this yesterday with Joe Tarpany. The momentum was against the Raiders as captain, but as a prop, he went out and he changed it by getting aggressive and basically getting physical with the Warriors over the weekend. Halfbacks can't do it that way. The only halfback ever did it that way, although Nathan Cleary might be about to change this himself, was Andrew Johns used to be able to go out and put a shot on every now and then, and everyone would go, wow, even the halfback's having a dig. And Cleary did that a few weeks ago. We saw that where he stepped up and physically in defence tried to turn the Panthers around. Now, but that's not the traditional way halves do it. The way halves do it, they kick out of trouble. They find the corners. They have this game of patience. They get the ball. They look for quick play of the balls. On the back of a quick play of the ball, put the ball down the corner. Good kick chase, jam up, good defence. Don't give them too much territory. And then just prey on that until eventually, hopefully, they get frustrated. They try something to get out of poor territory, and they'll make a mistake. And then you've got them, okay? And then the momentum suddenly shifts your way. And the way the game's played now, when you have momentum, your job is to put as many points on as you can while you have the ascendancy with momentum. So that's the way the halves, they try to get the play these days. The concern with Sexton, as good a job as he's done, is he just doesn't quite recognise those moments in the game when that needs to be done. Now, that's a small part of the game, and a lot of people go, oh, big deal. But that's the difference sometimes between winning the premiership and losing the grand final. That's how close it could get. That's how close it can get. And you go back to Nathan Cleary's grand final against Brisbane. You know what I mean? He just put on 15 minutes of just pure bliss football. Just turned the whole game and just everything he did. You want to go back to Andrew Johns, the best halfback we've seen against Parramatta in 2001. He just went out. It was 26-0 at half time. He just put on the best first half of football you've ever seen. And he just got his guys around the paddock. He did everything well and it all worked for him. 26-0, the game was good as dead. Now, it ended up, I think it was 30-24, something like that was the final score. So Parramatta came right back in the second half. But those moments when the halfback is just on his job, that's what you're paying for to win those tight games. It's only 1 or 2% difference, but in a grand final, that's the big difference. And that's why the Canterbury, they really have their tails up about this season. They see this now as an opportunity to win a premiership, and that's what they're looking for. Just that last couple of percent of improvement to get over the line.
And you and I have spoken about that, and there's a few knuckleheads out there who think that we, don't like the Dogs. There's nothing better than in a competition which has been dominated by a few teams for so long to see the Dogs or to see other teams come up. So, don't get that wrong. We're happy to see the Dogs.
I've got no reason. Look, I'm not death riding the Dogs. Well, look, I like. There's people at the club I like. Yeah. Okay, and people always say to me, "Who do you support?" I supported the Bears. Okay, they got kicked out 30 years ago. Okay, so I haven't really had a team to support. But I support the people in the game. I've got friends. Yeah. I've got friends within the game. I want them to have success. Yeah. There's people at Canterbury I like to see do well.
I mean, if you've got a club and the head of a club, one of the people you want is Gus Gould in your team. As part of your structure. I just want to ask you on that. At the moment, there's questions about his divided loyalties, not royalties. Loyalties. Where do you see that at the moment? Because people are saying, should he be with the Dogs? Should he be with the News? Can that be the same thing? What do you reckon?
Problem is this for that, okay? He's loyal to Channel 9, he's loyal to Canterbury, but his preference is the football side, okay? So part of his job at Canterbury is keeping confidentialities. Part of your job in the media is to talk about those situations, even if they might be confidential. Okay. For example, what's happened in this whole Galvin saga? Media's been finding out about it. It is true. It is happening, and they've been talking about it. Gould comes on and just poo-poos the media and says, "No, that's rubbish." Blah blah blah. He never comes out unless it benefits Canterbury, the club he's at, and will openly talk about a certain situation. It was the same as at Penrith. Now, that's fine because they're paying his wage. But there should be, I think, a real understanding that if you're watching Channel 9, you understand where his loyalties are. And almost to the point, I would go as far to say it's almost worth, I get the idea, I get the reason they have him there because he's a club official, he's well-spoken.
He's a legend of the game. He's been there for 50 years.
Yeah, and he's intelligent and he's articulate and he really has this ability to sell a story. Okay, nobody better in the game in that regard either. But I don't say I don't trust him. I just say that I listen to everything he says with the understanding that he's got a pay packet from another place who he prefers more. And that's the truth of it. Yeah, he just does. And cop that, okay? Now, that's a problem for the game, which the game doesn't want to handle. Now, I've said before that there's been suggestions about the Gus rule. I get the thinking behind it, but the fact is, none of these discussions can really be put there without clubs being participants in it, other clubs being participants in it, player managers being participants in it or players being involved in it. Now, if the NRL's got no appetite to investigate that and to keep any credibility around that, by not only dealing with Phil Gould, but other player managers, other football general managers, other coaches, all these other people, then don't pick on just Phil Gould.
Yep.
Don't bring in the rules just for Phil Gould. The rules actually exist now for Phil Gould if the NRL had the courage to act them out. But they also exist for all these other general managers. Parramatta, it's been quite openly spoken about now, that Parramatta thought they had him across the line. He hasn't been able to speak to anybody. But Parramatta now can see they thought they had him. Okay, so look, the thing is, they have this, this lack of appetite, the NRL, to actually police all this. And I just think if you're not going to police everybody and do it legitimately, then don't put one rule in there for Phil Gould just because he works for a different media organisation. You know what I mean? I know Channel 9 sort of wheel him out because they know it annoys news. And I know it does annoy news. Okay, I know it does. So that's part of the battle that no one else really cares about. But within the game, it's certainly significant, certainly part of it. And so that all happens. But I just think, look, he does have conflicting roles. He is able to manage his way and sleep at night. That's fine. But certainly, from my point of view, whenever I listen to him as the Canterbury General Manager of football, not as Phil Gould, the media expert.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Let's talk a little bit of Origin. Did you see the Spygate claims coming out of New South Wales and Queensland?
Yeah, well, look, they tried to find something to blow up and get upset about. Look, do we get upset about it? Not really. Look, the interesting thing about that is it showed how badly injured Stephen Crichton was.
Very bad.
Yeah,
very bad.
When I got first reports that he had a cork thigh, I was like, oh, he'll be okay. But once I saw that, given it was, what was it, Monday when it happened, 48 hours before, and how gingerly he was walking, I thought that's got to be a problem.
You think he's gone?
I don't think he'll play.
Okay.
And what it ultimately did in reality, all it did, Warren, was stop New South Wales pretending he was going to play
the Ducks and Drakes
on Wednesday night. Yep. And stopping Queensland fully preparing on Campbell Graham, who will now go to take his position.
So will Campbell Graham play right centre, or will Burton come in, do you think? Burton's flown up there to the 18th man. Do you think they'll do a switch at the end?
No, I don't think so. I think so. One, Graham's trained there.
Yep.
Okay. And Graham's just a very solid defensive centre. And for that reason, I think that they'll want to keep him in the side. I think Campbell Graham's a wonderful player, and I think he deserves a spot there. And I think defensively, Crichton's the best defensive centre in the game. Campbell Graham wouldn't be far behind him.
Yeah, okay. You talk about a lack of discussion, a lack of interest from news articles. Did you see? What do you think that's detrimental to the Queensland game?
Well, one of the concerns that's sort of been spoken around the game is that Queensland are generally at their best. It's funny. They're at their best when they feel insulted, and they're at their best when they feel put down, and that somebody from New South Wales has had a crack and put them in their place and all the rest of it. They're best when their back's at the wall and they want to come out fighting. And it's a bit like the old analogy about Mal Meninga. When you played Mal Meninga, you've tackled him, you'd say, good run, Mal. If he tackled you, you'd say, good shot, Mal. You know what I mean? And you just let him play, because the longer you kept him asleep, the better for you. But if someone want to go out and start jawing with him or want to get a little bit over-aggressive with him in a tackle, suddenly the fire would light up in Mal, and then he'd just murder everyone. Okay? And that was – so the New South Wales lesson was always with Mal, just put him to sleep. Just good tackle, Mal. Don't say anything if you don't have to, but do that. And Queensland are a bit the same. Queensland – are probably at their most vulnerable when there's nothing. You look at their famous victories, the Fatties Neville's in 95, totally written off. You look at when Wayne Bennett came back in, was it 2001 or 2 or whatever, when they came back,
Alfie.
He picked 10 debutants and everyone, after they'd just been beaten 3-0, brought Alfie back from England, all the rest of it, 2001 I think it was, and they just went out and just totally turned the narrative around. So you look at what was it, 3-4 years ago when our mate Bulldog wrote that they were the worst Queensland side ever. They were picking players out of position. Kurt Capewell had never played centre, but he was getting picked in the centres, for instance, from the second row, just because he could defend, basically. They didn't have anyone else there that could just make their tackles all game. So Bennett thought, I'll put a second row in there because at least I know he can tackle. But again, they won the series. And Queensland are at their most dangerous. They're like the injured animal. That's when they're most dangerous. But that's when they're most dangerous. They're like the wolf with his foot caught in a trap. Okay, that's the one time you really don't want to go near him. So,
did you see the headline? Smash this blue grub.
Yeah, that's just the media getting involved, trying to stir it up a bit. It was a bit of an ordinary headline, to be honest. The one thing that has come out of this, I think, which gives me a little bit of hope for the game, is that this Queensland idea that they're refusing to say Spencer Lenu's name. They don't mention his name in interviews. They dead bat everything that is said about him. But there's talk that within the camp, it's starting to bubble along. It's like they're keeping the lid on the boiling pot, so to speak. And that said, Lenu will welcome it. Yeah. Okay, and this all goes back to his fight with Jonathan Thurston. Firstly, which began at the beginning of last season with the Monkeygate scandal, and then obviously earlier this year where he tore into Thurston on the sideline for coming out and demanding he get 12 week suspension and all the rest of it. And what I love, I actually just they're grown men, let them have a blue, and Lenu will be there and will reply inclined if Queensland come after him.
Very good, Kenty. One more sleep till Origin.
Yeah.
Don't go hard tonight. Don't go hard tonight.
Not me.
Until tomorrow. See you then.